Past the 8 o'clock hour on Tuesday, August the 15th. Chris Lenois back with you on the Green Mountain Mornings program and joined in the studio by Harmony Birch of the Brattleboro Reformer. Good morning to you, Harmony.
Good morning.
Thanks for coming in, and we also want to thank the Brattleboro Savings and Loan for their financial support of our partnership with Brattleboro Community Television, who are here to document our conversation with members of the local media. They are an ultra-local programming sponsor of BCTV live events and municipal meetings as well. Starting off this morning, Harmony, talking about a story you covered last week up in the village of Bellows Falls, and we kind of knew this was coming. I remember you were in here after the revote on the budget, and we were kind of speculating as to what was going to be cut, because as you pointed out in your story about that vote, cutting about $250,000 out of the budget, that 89% of the village budget is police and fire, and so when they were looking at things to cut, it sounded like firefighters were the thing. And in fact, you point out at the lead of this article that was published on Friday, and people can read on reformer.com, there were already members of the Firefighters Association of Vermont outside demonstrating about this. So they knew this was coming as well, right?
I don't know if they exactly knew to this degree. I don't think it was the intention of the board or anyone really when the original budget was cut to cut all of the full-time firefighters.
Okay.
But I do think that they sense that the Bellows Falls community has had some animosity in some parts towards the firefighting community. They didn't, to my knowledge, talk about cutting any of the firefighters because the team was only, the full-time team was only 4 staff, and they aren't on at the same times.
Right.
So I think that the firefighting, not being a part of the community very long, I believe that the firefighting department has been cut a lot in the past, and I don't think that they were intending on making any significant cuts.
Well, and prior to you coming on board and covering the Bellows Falls Rockingham beat, there have been other attempts to try and eliminate the fire department down there, as I'm sure you know. Does the 4 full-time firefighters, one thing that wasn't clear to me, does that include the fire chief and deputy fire chief, or are they still part of the staff there?
I don't know, actually.
Yeah.
I'm not clear on that either.
Because you have a quote from, I believe it's, Deputy Fire Chief Steve, is it Senate? I wonder how you say
Senate. I don't
Senate.
know.
Okay, Senate, who's asking about, this long-going desire to eliminate career firefighters. I wondered if his job was now gone, if he's one of those 4 firefighters, but that's not clear at this point.
Yeah, I believe, I'm going to go ahead on a limb, and I don't actually know if this is sure, but I think it is. His family was very upset.
Yeah.
And it seems like that would make sense to me.
Well, it would make sense to me, too, with some of the reaction from some of the people who were at this meeting last Wednesday. Were like, what are we going to do for firefighter services now, right? I mean, there doesn't seem to be a plan in place now that they've cut 4 full-time firefighters for what happens if an alarm rings in the village of Bellows Falls.
Yes, so there is no official plan in place yet, but these firefighters aren't going to be cut until like 120-something days after this decision was made. And because they're not going to be cut until that time, they're planning on making a plan during that time. And they're going to reform a fire committee that will assess the fire needs in Bellows Falls.
Yeah, well, and as one of the folks who was at the meeting you quoted pointed out that one of the other services that the fire department provides there is Narcan services when people overdose. The police currently in Bellows Falls do not carry Narcan. So there's a lot of different things that are going on in the village of Bellows Falls that cutting the firefighting staff is going to possibly affect. It was a unanimous vote by the trustees. A lot of deliberation. Did you get a sense that some were really reluctant to go forward with this full cutting of all 4 firefighters? And what do you think ultimately convinced them to vote to cut that part of the budget?
I think that they have been beaten up a lot lately since the first budget vote. So for a few months now, they've been kind of on the end of being beaten up a lot. And I think a lot of really vocal community members have been coming to meetings and talking about the things that they think should be cut. And so I think that the trustees just want to make it within the budget and do what the people want. And I think that this is what they think the people want. I think that they, again, didn't intend to cut the full fire department, but because of those notices, because it will be halfway through the fiscal year once, at least once all the firefighters are off. Mm-hmm. So I think that they had to cut all of them in order to make that amount of money.
Wow. And it sounded to me like other folks, either trustees or voters, you talked about one woman actually watching this on Fact TV and then coming down and saying, make the cuts already. It sounded like some people were quite happy to see the firefighters go. Is that fair to say, too?
I think so, yes. I don't think a lot of people were saying throughout the meeting that it wasn't personal. As someone who isn't as familiar with the community, who's just coming in, I don't know how true that is. But a lot of people do think that the fire department needs to go away, it seems.
Yeah. And I'm not going to make you comment on this as somebody coming, but the fact that there were members of that community that wanted jobs cut in a way just for their taxes, and I get that as far as affordability and taxes, but to sit there and be mad that these trustees are having a hard time eliminating 4 jobs, to me, that is just a little bit insensitive by some of the people who were taking part in these deliberations at this meeting. And that's speaking from somebody who lives here in Brattleboro, pays taxes in Brattleboro, and understands the crunch of paying taxes in town. This isn't the end of cuts in Bellows Falls, though, is it? You were also pointing out in your last couple paragraphs. Well, first of all, the board, in a show of solidarity, said we're not going to take any more for what we do. But there's other cuts to come as well.
Yes, there are other cuts to come. I think that the board is still they're not as unanimous in these cuts, so they're still going to kind of work it out. And some of it may have to do with the financial office of the town. So they need to talk to the Rockingham Select Board about that as well. So that will happen during the joint board meeting.
Yeah. So, I mean, the board members, they make $800. The president makes $1,000. That gets you a little bit further the way there. Are they looking at cutting other positions within the town government?
I'm not entirely sure how many positions they have in the town government. They have the basics, but they have mostly the finance office, and they're hiring a new manager, and they're looking at maybe cutting that will make 4 positions in the finance office. They're looking at maybe cutting one of those positions, but they have to make sure the town is also on board with that.
But still no discussion of getting rid of the whole Bellows Falls trustees structure and just going to being part of the whole Rockingham governance structure, right? That's not coming up at all.
I have not heard that discussion.
No, of course not. That would make a lot of sense, wouldn't it? All right. Harmony Birch of the Brattleboro Reformer covered a lot of stories this past week for the Brattleboro Reformer that you can read in the pages as well as online at reformer.com. We'll talk about some of those with her. You're welcome to join in, 802-254-5286, if you have something you want to say. 63 degrees outside at 21 minutes before the 9 o'clock hour. Chris Lenois back with you on the Green Mountain Mornings program. Harmony Birch of the Brattleboro Reformer, my guest for the remainder of today's program, talking about stories she's covered in the past week for the Brattleboro Reformer and online at reformer.com. There was actually a version of a story, Harmony, on reformer.com that didn't make the print edition, and I didn't include it in your packet because I wanted to just throw you a little curveball here, and look, she looks terrified. But it has to do with the conviction of Jacob Bannis, guilty of domestic assault, and the jury being a little bit disgruntled, I guess, because they were hungry. And you used the term hangry in this, and I loved that term. And so I just wanted to just put that out there, that if people go to reformer.com and look at the August 4th story about this defendant found guilty on one of 3 domestic violence charges, your first sentence, an arguably hangry jury deliberated Thursday night, but that didn't make the print edition of the version of the story, and you didn't know that until I just told you that. And so I won't ask you the motivation behind that, but I just want, was hangry your invention?
No, you've never heard the term
I've never
hangry?
heard hangry before.
Boy, you might be a little bit out of touch with the youths.
I'm very out of touch with the youths. This is why I have youths like you come into the studio. You know, the word selfie was out forever, and I didn't know what that was for like a long time too. This was still years ago. I'm with it now, but they keep changing what it is, so I keep losing track. But so hangry is an actual term.
Yeah, it's hungry, angry.
Hungry, angry. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and then there's the third, when you're talking about a jury, the hang, a hung jury.
Oh
And
gosh.
being hanged.
Oh, okay. Okay. Not hanging as in death.
Right,
That's
right, right. No, not hang, but a hung jury being one that can't decide or can't deliberate. So there was a third element to this. So hangry, so hungry, angry. Okay, it was great stuff.
okay.
Anyway, it should have made that. All right, so that's it for that one. Back on to the stuff that I had planned to talk with Harmony about, and back to your beat in Bellows Falls. And the news that James McAullife, also known as Jigs to many of the people who know him up in Bellows Falls, is resigning from the Bellows Falls Union High School School Board. Sounds to me like this is a big loss of institutional knowledge for that group.
Yeah, I guess you could say that. I think, yeah, he's been here for forever, and it would be a huge loss of institutional knowledge. I haven't covered any of the high school board meetings yet, so I'm not completely familiar with the personalities yet. But yeah, it's a loss of knowledge. I mean,
Talk about 12 years on different school boards there, and somebody who his name comes up. You don't forget a name like Jigs.
No.
He's somebody who's been very invested in Bellows Falls governance on a number of levels. He's currently a trustee.
Yes.
So one of the people who was involved in that other vote that took place regarding the budget cuts that led to the firing of the firefighters. In this instance, it sounds to me, well, he says that part of it with his travel schedule is one of the reasons that he's resigning. But it feels to me like more about this Act 46 issue is what really led to his resignation.
Yes. I think that is it. He was on according to the school board chair, I think his name is David Clark. Is that correct?
Yes.
David Clark.
Yep.
Yeah. According to him, he said that Jigs was on the outside of what a lot of other people felt about Act 46 and the merger. He was in favor of it. And that's kind of what he told me. He was like, I've been doing this for a while, but I just decided that it's now time for me to step back and let everyone else go for it. I think the main concern will be now filling his seat. And that's what David Clark was really concerned about, because I guess it's really hard to fill school board seats.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, in Newfane a few years ago, before you arrived on the scene, they actually had several vacancies, and some people in the community just stepped up to fill those seats. So yeah, it is a problem from time to time. And the irony of that, of course, is the whole idea of district consolidation is to reduce the number of school board seats in some ways. If you consolidate all these boards into one, then you don't have to worry about filling those seats. But David Clark is one of those people who was against the Act 46 merger, it sounds like.
Yes. David Clark believes that it will take away from local governance and community power.
So will not having a school board member on the board, Mr. Clark there. Did you talk to Jigs McAullife specifically about Act 46 and his feelings as to why he thought that was good for that community?
No, I didn't. But he didn't really get too much into it when we talked. He just said that he didn't feel like the community was handling it well, and that was a part of the reason why he decided to step down.
Yeah, well, that is one of the many communities that does not have a plan currently for how to consolidate under the Act 46 law or under the new tweak to it known as Act 49. You have a story not in Bellows Falls that was in yesterday's paper, but this sounds interesting, this Living Community Challenge for Algiers Village in Guilford. And they've been doing a lot of cool stuff in Algiers Village with getting the Guilford store back together and kind of just being mindful. And now that the bridge is open again, people can actually drive through Algiers Village, especially the people right on the other side. But let's start with what is this Living Community Challenge?
So a Living Community Challenge, it has a number of sectors, which I list in my story, but it has to do like water, energy, health, happiness, materials, equity. It's about bringing the community together, and within bringing the community together, making it more sustainable and having like eco-friendly community centers and things like that. So it's this huge step for sustainability, and it's done by the International Living Future Institute.
Yeah, there's a mouthful.
Yeah. And there's a number of different cities mostly that are looking to participate in this. And I don't think that any of them have actually gotten LCC certified yet, because this has only been going on for a couple of years now. And it takes the step to you send in your application and then they maybe approve it and then they give you some money to like further research how this would work in your community. And so it's a several-year process. But
it's something that's being undertaken more by urban areas. I mean, you talk about if Guilford or if Algiers Village, not even Guilford, but Algiers Village specifically, that would be the first rural community, small rural community. That's I wonder how they even heard about this and decided to make a choice to do it.
So the Wyndham Regional Commission actually reached out to one of the members of the Friends of Algiers Village, and his name is something that I forget. I'm sorry, sir.
Are you talking about Wyndham Regional Commission, or are you talking about the Friends of Algiers Village?
Swindler. Gary Swindler.
Right. Yes. You've got Swindler or you've got Chris Campany. So.
Yeah. No, I meant Gary Swindler. Someone from the Wyndham Regional Commission reached out to Gary Swindler, who is very well knowledgeable about energy stuff, and was like, hey, we really think that Algiers should participate in this because we just think that you guys would be a good candidate for it. And they've had success, I guess, working with Algiers before. So they reached out and were like, look at this thing. And he looked at it and got a bunch of other nonprofits on board.
Are they looking at it as far as a benefit? I mean, obviously, you have the carbon footprint reduction benefit to this, but do they look at this as some kind of draw? Is that one reason that some of these communities are going through this living community challenge? Is this something that they feel could draw good attention from the outside for them?
From what I talked to Morse and Swindler, who are both on the Friends of Algiers Village, and that is what they told me. They didn't say that that's why. I think they're doing it just to kind of make the community a better place and make it more sustainable because they think it's the right thing to do. But yes, they do think that it would be good for the community in terms of tourism. Okay,
because it has you use the term master plan that they're developing for Algiers Village. Now, Guilford and maybe even Algiers Village already has a master plan. I mean, every town kind of comes up with these plans that they're looking forward to. So I didn't know if this was an additional master plan into whatever the whole town master plan is, or if this replaces the town master plan, or how exactly those kinds of things all work together.
So I think this is just for Algiers. It's my understanding, I think.
Yeah,
unless I wrote otherwise.
No, it makes sense.
But I think this is just for Algiers, and I think that no matter what happens with the LCC, they will probably be using this master plan, but they wanted to kind of, it's for the LCC. They wanted to kind of talk about the qualities that the LCC is looking for and get the community input on it.
Yeah, and they want community input tomorrow evening.
Yes.
5:30 p.m. at the Guilford Community Church. All these different nonprofit organizations hosting a community forum to help develop this Living Community Challenge plan for the Algiers Village. Another story you had in Monday's paper had to do with us here at WKVT and our Load the Latchis event. We talk about your newness to the community, so your first time to see this event. And I want to say that this is your best article that you've written for the Reformer because you quote me extensively in it.
So, yes, I do.
You. Yeah.
You're welcome. Yeah, that was really fun. I was excited. It's a really cool concept. I've never seen anything like this before.
Yeah, I mean, and so when you came down to the Latchis Theater and I took you into the theater, what were you expecting to see versus what you saw in there?
Okay, so I think I had done some pre-research, so I might have seen pictures that Chris had taken before, but I don't really know what I was expecting. I guess I didn't have any expectations, and I went in there and there's like all these bags, these brown paper bags on these seats, and I was like, wow, this is a really cool concept. Like, I don't think I really understood before.
Right. Full of food or cash donations. And you got to talk to Rosie.
I did. I got to talk to Rosie. She was cool. She told me a little bit about how the food shelf worked and what sorts of challenges they struggle with and what sorts of clientele they have and how more people maybe should be utilizing it and what sorts of people can utilize it. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah. Reformer.com. People can read that story if they've recycled their Monday edition of the paper already. Certainly appreciate all the different media helping draw attention to the issue of food insecurity in our community and helping the Groundworks Collaborative do what they do to try and combat it. Harmony Birch, you've got plenty of other stories I know in the hopper coming up with your byline. Anything you want to let the listeners know about?
So I think actually you guys have been advertising it a little bit. I've heard it on the radio, but the Salute Military Golf Association will be holding a tournament on September 11th. And so I have a story that will someday be published about that.
Sometime before September 11th, probably. Right on. All right, well, we'll keep looking out for that and look for you in a couple weeks back here on the air. Thanks for your time this morning.
All right, thank you.
All right, Harmony Birch, Brattleboro Reformer, reformer.com. We'll be back to wrap up this edition of Greenbound Mornings right after these messages.